Hi everyone, just doing some study. I head back to work tomorrow, so I've just got a bit of a free day today. And I just flicked to this, which was the introduction to Luke, and I just noticed something that I hadn't really considered before, which is interesting. So if we see that Luke and Acts are both written from this particular perspective, okay, but then it gets to Paul's section and it's very specific, and it's almost like we see that contribution of both Luke and Paul. And it says here, that, like at the start, it says the author of the third gospel is not named. Okay, so it's not articulated that it's Luke, but we see that the gospel of Luke appeared to be written after both Mark and Matthew, with a date considerably later. So 1st century AD have tended to push the dating of Luke back to the 70s or 80s, while Mark and Matthew were in the 60s or 70s. And so we see that the book of Acts is kind of like the sequel or the continuing on, in a way, of Luke. But we also see that, we see the reference of the order in which they've been written and in how they appear. It's almost like, what I've said before, the first will become last, the last will become first. It also has this kind of vibe about it that Luke, Luke is always written to those, the faithful ones that follow him and wait for him, like the bride, for example. But it also kind of feels like it's written for the Gentile time period as well. Feels like it's written for readers of this time period. It almost feels like when you read Matthew, it's written from the Jewish time period. Just in the way that they're rebuked and in the way that they show their unbelief and other things. Take of it what you will, but that's just something that's sort of sitting with me. And I've ever since there was a revelation, it was from a group online. They came across the revelation of like Luke, Mark, and Matthew speaking to different groups. I've held that as, I agree with that. I don't know, whether it's specifically different groups or different time periods or what it may be, but it does feel like it is 3 different groups, because you see it scattered throughout the Bible. So where that fits in the greater context, I'm not sure. But certain people believe one thing and certain people believe another. I'm still exploring this and I'm still trying to understand this because, I was led to it and I studied it for a while, and then I was kind of led just to put it aside. And now I'm sort of looking at it again from a fresh perspective. So very interesting, nevertheless. But I noticed throughout my study that Luke is always speaking to those that Jesus is sort of more approving of. Like they're always, he even like we see with the Last Supper, like he sits down and he says, like, I've been looking forward to having this with you. Whereas in the other 2, Mark and Matthew, he doesn't do that. He just kind of directs them. Like he's more blunt with them. He's like, take this, do this. But they're already eating when he comes and sits down to do communion. So it's very interesting. I'm not sort of hard firming a yes or no on things, but I do, and I still believe strongly that Luke is, addressed to the time period of now and that group of people that are waiting and watching. So, and you see that in the different the stories that are told as well. Like we see that in the starting of Luke as well. Just at the very start, it immediately goes into Zacharias, starts talking about that and talks about John's birth and things like that. So yeah, very interesting, something to consider, and just sharing. God bless.